so a good way to formulate it that I use all the time is that everything is both one and multiple at the same time. Everything you can
Okay,
encounter,
unpack that for me because I don't know what you mean by that.
right? So a chair is one thing,
Yes.
right? It's a chair, but a
Yep.
chair is also many things, right? It's legs and it's a back, and
Okay.
those legs are also many
So it's
things, right? That
composed of
leg
many
is made of
things.
wood. It's
Yeah.
made
Yeah.
of paint. It's made of all these different identities, and so identities stack up. And so everything you encounter is both one and multiple. Now, the way in which things are one is a complete mystery
Mm.
to the modern scientist. It's a given. Like, why do I think that a chair is one thing? What makes it one thing?
Okay.
Because it's a bunch of things,
Yep.
and it's a bunch of things, and it scales all the way down to like quantum fields or whatever,
Okay.
right? And so this is the problem now, that as science kind of reaches its limit, they're really realizing the problem of identity, the problem of, they use words like emergence and all these kinds of
Mm.
words to try to talk about the manner in which multiple things jump up into unity,
Yeah.
right? And so that once this happens, like even in the scientific world, once they realize the problem of unity and multiplicity coexisting, they realize that, that's what Plato was talking about. And that's what Aristotle was talking about. And that's what Aquinas was talking about.
Exactly.
They were talking
Right.
about it thousands of years ago. And the weird scientific age is like a strange parenthesis where people stopped realizing the problem and just started looking at all the details and didn't realize that they're not accounting for the manner in which things coalesce into unities,
Right. Right.
that things
So
have names, that things have identities, right? And that this is related to something like consciousness or something like intelligence.
okay. So how do you start to answer some of these questions? Like, do you just look back at it and say, well, it's a mix, it's a mystery, or it's a starting point, or it's an axiom, or can you unpack that a little bit more, drawing more from ancient thought, where maybe a contemporary thinker would be ignorant?
No, it's not. It's not difficult at all. It's
Okay.
it's it's not difficult because it can help. It actually can help people understand religion so much better, right?
Mm.
And so you have at the outset of scripture, you have a description. There's heaven and there's earth. And even in the Middle Ages, you read someone like Dante, and he completely linked it with Aristotle and said, heaven is the place of actuality, and earth is the place of potentiality. So you have
Okay.
names, you have identities, you have uh, principles, and then you
Yes.
have potentials in which those principles can exist. And so a chair has an identity, and we know, and it's a purpose, right? It's
Okay.
not just a general identity. It's like a chair is for sitting.
Yeah.
That's what it's for, and so
So
that's what
so it's
gives it.
it's final cause.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
the final cause will, let's say, legislate what can participate, how it gathers unity together.
Okay.
So it's easier to see in terms of it's easier to see in terms of human interactions, obviously. So
Mm.
a sports team is a great way to understand it. It's
Okay.
like you have a team, you have a bunch of people, and those people can change, right?
Yeah.
They can actually change. They don't have to be the same people, but there's
Hmm.
something joining them together. There's a purpose joining them together. And that purpose is the unitive principle which makes the team exist,
Okay.
right? And that purpose is to play basketball or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
and to play within a hierarchy of different teams that play together.
Yeah.
And so the players are potential. They're potentials in which the identity of the team can
Take shape.
gather together and create unity.
Okay.
And so it's the same with anything, everything that exists between one and multiple has that reality.
So you would say that this potential for a purpose kind of scales up to everything in life, and eventually
It's,
leads to what? God? Is that where it goes?
yeah, well, I mean, it ultimately leads to God. There's a jump at some point. Obviously, it's
Yeah.
like God is beyond all description. Definitely,
Mm.
that's necessary. But it definitely scales up in a way that. The reason why I emphasize this so much is that one of the problems people have today is that they think that religion is arbitrary and superstitious,
Right.
right? And that it doesn't make sense.
It's
Like,
just
why
it's
would I
just
go
made
to a
up,
building?
and yeah.
Like, why would I go to a building and like stand there and then sing songs and eat bread and wine. Like, what is this, all this nonsense? Like, what is going on? And
Right.
so what I try to help people understand is that that reality is the reality that you participate in church is a reality you participate in every single human interaction that you have. That is like a, let's say you sit together for a family meal,
Mm-hmm.
right? That family meal is the thing that's binding you together. And then there's
Okay.
a ritual in which you participate in
Mm-hmm.
order for that to exist.
Yeah.
But you can't do anything at the table. There's certain things you can do, and there's certain things you can't do. Like if you stand on the table during dinner, you're gonna ruin dinner,
Okay. Yeah.
right? If you lay down on the floor during dinner, if you scream at each other during dinner, you're gonna ruin dinner.
Yeah.
And so there's this ritual, there's this pattern. This is a good way to understand it. There's a pattern of being
Okay.
that makes a family dinner exist.
That makes it
And
what
then
it
there's
is. Is that what you're
That's
saying?
what it
Yeah.
is. Yeah,
Okay.
it's this the joining of multiples into one, and those multiples are not arbitrary. They're like a dance. They're like a pattern. They're like a
Okay.
they really we are like a breathing in and breathing out, you could say.
Okay.
And so you sit together, you eat the same meal, you talk to each other. Everybody has to listen to each other. It's a liturgical thing,
Sure.
a
Sure.
family dinner.
Yeah, and I can appreciate the significance of that as someone who lives a liturgical tradition and understands what that word means, but for somebody who is on the outside of that looking in, how do you underscore the significance of it for them? Like, what if for them they might just say, well, that's just customs, that's just cultural habits, to make us all feel comfortable and welcome. It could just as easily be that the best thing to do at a dinner party is to stand on the table and do something crazy. If our customs were so constructed in a different way,
But that's, I mean, it's nonsense because there is a reality. Like if I said standing on the dinner table, then maybe that could maybe exist in some culture, but like taking a dump on the dinner table is not going to exist. There's
okay,
a limit. Like there's flexibility in the potential, right? There's always flexibility, but there is a manner in which that flexibility starts to break down on the edges. You can't have anything, right? If you encounter someone and you have a conversation, that conversation is ritualized, and you will talk to
sure,
them.
sure,
If you
yeah,
spit in their face, then you're breaking the communion. And these things, these patterns are inevitable. But
yeah,
it doesn't mean that there's only one way to do it. There could be
right, right,
flexibility, but that flexibility, just like a chair can be made out of a lot of things,
sure,
but a chair can be made out of water. You can't make a chair out of water. It's
right,
just not possible.
right,
There,
yeah,
there's a manner in which potentiality is bound to an identity
okay,
in a certain pattern that holds it together for a certain way.
yeah,
And so let's bring it back to a religious ritual, for
okay,
example. Is that so? Our rituals scale up. So we have small rituals like, you brush your teeth. You have to brush your teeth in a certain way. You
mm-hmm.
can't brush your teeth in any way. If you brush your teeth with a razor blade, then you're going to be in trouble, right? So you have to brush your teeth in a certain manner. There's flexibility, but there's a reality to that. And
Okay,
that is for a certain good.
mm-hmm.
And then you have families, you have communities that have ritualized encounters for a good that is maybe a little higher. And church is that, but for the highest good. We gather together,
Right,
right?
right,
And we attend and we celebrate the highest good,
mm-hmm.
the God of infinite love.
Yeah,
And so we come together, first of all, we recognize that good, and then we act together in a way that makes us attend and makes us, let's say, connect together towards that highest good.
yeah,
And this is something, like I said, that happens in a soccer team.
mm-hmm.
We do the same. We do that in a soccer team. It's just that the soccer team isn't attuned to the highest good. It's
Mm-hmm.
attuned to a lower good, which is, it's fine to win a soccer team, but you
Mm-hmm.
can't base all of human civilization on soccer.
Right,
You need higher goods, and that's where religion inevitably becomes a part of
okay.
any real civilization, because you have to find a way to identify, join together in that good, and recognize and celebrate that good.
So the community at large has to recognize some purpose of their own unity that brings them all together.
Or else they're not a community,
Right.
or else they're a crowd, or else they're suburbs.
And
The suburbs are a great example of a breakdown of that process.
okay.
because if you think of an ancient town,
Yeah.
you would have uh, a town with, like, usually the church is somewhere in the middle or maybe in the
Sure.
east, like it's in a prominent place.
Or a
The
monastery or
church
something.
the church spire is higher than all the buildings,
Yeah.
and so the town exists, and they all can look up and see the thing which binds them together.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They can all see it at the same time. And then on Sundays they go there and they do the same things the same time to recognize the good which is binding them.
Okay.
And then lower than that, you'll have like a civic building, maybe a market, places of communion which we recognize, but have to be submitted to that higher good.
Yeah.
Because if the civic authorities aren't submitted to the God of infinite love, they're going to become
Right.
corrupt, and they
Right.
do become corrupt.
Right.
They become obsessed with economy. They become obsessed with trade. They become obsessed with power over people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you scale that down. Now the suburbs is a great example because they said, no, we don't need the churches, right? The churches in the structure of the way the
Or a
city is.
city center even necessarily.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
well, once you remove the church as the center, then you have this. At first, you have the civic building, but at some point, it's going to break apart. You're going to remove that. Then
Yeah.
you're going to have the mall. The
Right.
mall is going to be the last remainder of like unity in cities. Then you get rid of the malls, and now you just have individual points spread out on land where
Yeah.
there's no connection. You don't know
Yeah.
your neighbor. You
Yeah.
don't have any common projects, and that
Mm.
is an inevitable consequence of breaking down, of getting rid of the higher identities or the higher meanings that we participate in.